All right, so what I was going to say was, the last time that I was here in 2019, I presented 4 ideas that might help Spaniards understand our strange time. Because I had very much the sense that there was a rupture in history around 2014, 2015. Sometime there, something changed. And weirdness spread throughout my country, certainly. But politically, populism on the right and left, very strange things were happening. And we weren't sure what was causing it. I've increasingly come to see that major changes in technology are perhaps the largest factor for why things are getting so weird. And that's what I didn't know the role of technology when I was here in 2019, but I'm here now to tell you what I've learned about the role of technology in one major piece. So there we are. This is what I spoke about last time, based on my book, The Coddling of the American Mind. And this time, I'm here to talk about what I've learned about how technology is severely affecting human development and changing our children in ways that I think are extremely alarming and that every country must respond to. You don't have a choice. And I'll show you the statistics in a moment. Okay. So to begin, I want you to think about human development by thinking about brain development. And what I want you to do is, as a metaphor for how neurons grow, think about tree roots. So here you see a photo of a tree whose roots went out into the world, and where they went was structured by the environment that they found. And you can see that there's a brick pattern, so the trees followed where there was water. Here's another example. A tree grew up behind a tombstone, a gravestone, and as it scraped against it, the bark was cut, I suppose, and the tree grew around the tombstone. Very slow, but that's the way trees grow, that's the way neurons grow. Now I want you to think about the human body growing in that way. And so this is a kind of a funny thing that some people have noticed that their left pinky is curved. If whatever hand you hold your phone in, if you spent 10 hours a day holding your phone like that, going through puberty, your pinky could literally grow around it. Now, if you're over 30, don't bother checking because your pinky finished before puberty. But if you went through puberty on TikTok, you might have TikTok phone pinky, a bended pinky like that. But one thing we know for sure is that all of us are now, we're using our bodies differently now that we're all on devices all day long. And it's causing all kinds of neck problems, wrist problems, finger problems. This deformity is clearest in the eyeball. Our eyeballs grow based on light coming in, and it turns out that if you spend a lot of time close up with a screen in your face and you don't get the long views that our ancestors always got out on Earth, then your eyeballs grow too long, and the focal point is not the retina. The focal point is in front of the retina, so you need glasses for life. So all of this is happening. Oh, and then, of course, sleep. Because so many of our kids can take their devices into bed, what's more interesting, closing your eyes and thinking about things or watching TikTok? So because young people around the world are sleeping less because of these devices, and if you sleep less, almost every biological system is going to be disrupted. So my point is that what we're seeing, this is a photo of an actual Gen Z brain. Okay, it's not a photograph. I made it with Midjourney. But my point is that what's been happening since about 2012, I think, is that young people's brains have been growing around their phones in much the same way that this tree grew around the tombstone. If it's always there, it's going to grow around it. I can summarize the whole book as a tragedy in 2 acts. So in Act 1, we lose the play-based childhood. Now, this was especially clear in the Anglo countries in America, we all had a free-range childhood. We were out on our bicycles from the age of 7 or 8. We had adventures. We took risks. And that was true in all the English-speaking countries. It was, and then we changed in the 1990s. We got afraid of our neighbors, afraid of kidnapping. And so we took away a lot of childhood independence in the 1990s. But mental health didn't collapse then. It actually stayed level with the millennial generation. It's only once we do this very quick switch of technology between 2010 and 2015, that's when mental health collapses around the world. I can summarize this even more concisely by saying we have overprotected our children in the real world and we have underprotected them online. Now, so this is the, what I'm going to do is go through some of the harms and then end with some ideas for policy and ideas for parents. And I just want to check, whoever's handling the slides, I made some updates, especially to the ending part, the policy part. In this PowerPoint, it's kind of a mess at the end. I can just talk my way through it, but if someone's listening who is controlling that, and if they have the one that the file name is Haidt del Pino Foundation Final. So if you have that, if you could load it in.
These ones are the ones we sent this morning.
Oh. Okay. Oh, look, it's possible I made the mistake, but all right, fine. Fine. As long as I know that, then I'll deal with it. Okay. Okay. All right. So let me show you what's been going on, and this is what has put me on this campaign, seeing these kinds of stats and seeing them around the world. So what we first saw in the United States was that there was a huge change in the 2010s. So this graph is when American college students go into the mental health center or the counseling center, what are they reporting? What's the problem? And it used to be that about 11% said anxiety and depression. 11% of college students were having issues with anxiety and depression up until 2010. And then we get into this period, and this is what happens. So I call this, that 2010 to 2015 is the great rewiring. Everything changed in the technosphere, the technical environment. And so we see that especially with rising anxiety and depression among American college students. Other data sets, we see it in younger kids, we see it in people who don't go to college. And some people said, when I started talking about this, some people said, oh, it's just self-report data. Young people are just very comfortable saying they're depressed. It's not a real thing. In fact, maybe it's good. They admit it. But if that was the case, then we wouldn't see a corresponding change in behavior. But we do. In the United States, our Centers for Disease Control tracks hospital admissions so that if there's some new thing happening around the country, they'll pick it up very quickly. And so they track hospital admissions or emergency room visits for self-harm, intentional self-harm, mostly cutting yourself or something like that, or taking an overdose of pills. And again, the levels were stable until 2010, and then they go shooting up, more than quintupling, or roughly quintupling for the preteen girls. 10 to 14-year-old girls didn't used to cut themselves in 2010, but by even before COVID, by 2019 even, it was much more common. And we see the same pattern for suicide. Again, this is all American data. So now here, boys, the blue line, boys have a higher rate of suicide. The girls are in orange. And once again, we see that the levels were stable before 2010, and then we get a very big increase in completed suicides. This is not self-report. This is not changing diagnostic criteria. These are additional dead children. And with this incredible 67% increase in a single year between 2012 and 2013, what happened in 2012? And it was when I discovered that it wasn't just the USA, it was all of the English-speaking countries for sure, but it's also all of Western Europe, especially Northern Europe, and now we're beginning to get data in from East Asia and Latin America. So the trends are a little different, but we are generally seeing a global increase. Just one example, in the UK, a similar study came out looking at self-harm from medical records. Once again, no trend before 2010, and then we get into this period, and it's like somebody turned on a light switch, and everything changed. And I think that light switch was in Menlo Park, California. That's the headquarters of Facebook, or Meta. And then this is looking across all of Europe. Now, this is self-report data. There's a survey done every year, every other year, among 33 European countries. Once again, levels of high psychological distress, stable before 2010, and then for Europe as a whole, it goes up. I had my team look up data for Spain, and we see generally the same trends, a little bit less than the average, but we see the same trends. So the one data set we could find that went back pretty far was from, it was all Catalonia young people. And what they found was this, that the rate of anxiety disorders, now here, so you see you get the rise during 2010 to 2015, and then it was actually stable. This is unusual. It was stable in Spain in the late 2010s, and then it goes up with COVID. But you do see something changed for you as well there. And the same thing for depression is very much the same story. And your analysts, your doctors are seeing the connection to social media. This is actually a very important study that I've relied on in some of my debates with other researchers. Is it just a correlation, or can we show causality? Can we show that it's the arrival of social media that caused this? So there's a very important study was done here in Spain looking at the rollout of high-speed internet. And you have across all Spanish provinces, what do you have, 30 or 40? How many provinces are there? You all think different numbers, okay. But anyway, you got a lot of provinces here. And in some of them, I can't tell which one this is, but in some of them, high-speed internet came in earlier. So in 2010, nobody had high-speed internet in Spain. By 2016, people had access to it, but some provinces had a lot, some had a little. And so what these Spanish researchers did was they just looked at psychiatric admissions, and it was either admissions or discharge, I can't remember, but they looked at psychiatric hospital records to see, does the increase happen related to when the increase in high-speed internet happened? Because if you don't have high-speed internet, older people, you remember what it was like to wait for a photograph to load, right? Younger people, like, what do you mean? You just press a button and the photograph loads. No, you had it like line by line. So it was only when you get high-speed internet that you can really get social media with photos and then video. And so what they found was so the main analysis was looking province by province, and they found a very close correlation. And what they were able to show overall is that if you look at the rate of mental health problems, this is the most serious one, self-harm and suicide attempts, you find that the orange line is boys, the blue line is girls, and if you graph the gray line, which is the penetration, how much high-speed internet is there in that province, what you find is that the girls' line tracks high-speed internet rollout very, very well. Boys, not so much. So again, we see this is evidence of causality. This is not just a correlation. This shows that across many observations, across many provinces, we see this relationship. And of course, everything I'm telling you about social media is going to get a lot worse because of AI. AI is going to make much more gripping material. AI already runs the algorithms, and they're going to get a lot better. So we've got to act on this. We can't just let this run because it's going to get a lot worse. Now, why? Why is this happening? The story that I tell in the book is what I call the great rewiring of childhood. And I keep looking for other stories. I keep inviting people, okay, if you don't think it was the phones and social media, what was it? And, was it the global financial crisis? No, that was 2008, and it was getting better and better by 2011. So nothing else fits other than this story. And here it is in detail. Here's what I think happened. So suppose you were born in 1990. Suppose you're a girl who was born in 1990. You're a millennial. And you begin puberty around, around age 12, roughly, let's say. So you begin puberty around 2002. And you have a phone. Millennials in the audience, what kind of phone is that? It's a flip phone. Do you know what's the brand or what's the model number? Motorola Razr. I'm finding that the millennials have a lot of fondness for the Motorola Razr, and for the game of Snake. Did you play Snake on it? Okay, so a lot of millennial heads are nodding, okay? So, but that was it, okay? You have a flip phone, you can call your friends and family, you can text your friends and family, and you can play Snake. That's it, okay? It was a communication device. So you go through puberty, let's say 2002 to 2006 or 8, and you're done with puberty when the iPhone comes out, and you're done with puberty when Instagram comes out. So millennials, this is why millennials had very good mental health, I believe, or at least we don't see any sign of damage from technology when we look at the millennials. But suppose instead you're a girl who was born 10 years later. Suppose you were born in the year 2000. Well, you begin puberty around, let's say, 2012. 2012 is the year that Facebook buys Instagram, and that's the year that all the girls go onto it. 2012 is the year in the United States when most people had a smartphone, because it comes out in 2007, but it's not until 2012 that most Americans have a smartphone. And in Spain, it's probably just a year or two behind on that. So now you're going through puberty as the product in the attention economy. You have thousands of companies competing to get to you every day on your smartphone. That couldn't happen on a Motorola Razr. So this, I think, is the great rewiring of childhood. I can show it to you more intuitively. This is what childhood used to be like. Kids would be out playing, unsupervised. You could take risks. If you found an extraterrestrial, you didn't have to tell adults. You could have all kinds of adventures, you and the extraterrestrial, trying to help him phone home. But this is what childhood has become. It's very, very solitary. For boys, you cannot go to a friend's house if you want to play with your friends. You need your controller, your headset, your avatar, and then you can play multiplayer video games. You can't do that if you go to your friend's house. So boys don't hang out with each other in person as much. Girls are much more hooked on social media. Childhood has become very solitary. And that's a recipe for depression. I can show you the great rewiring more quantitatively. In the United States, we have a study that tracks like every minute of every day for people. Like, what were you doing at 3 o'clock? And what we can see is this is the daily average time spent with friends, not counting school or work. Outside of school and work, how much time you're spending with friends. And what you see is that almost all groups are spending 40 to 60 minutes. They've got jobs, they've got families. It's only the young people who are spending a lot of time until 2012, and then it begins to drop. Because once you have a smartphone, you're not going to spend much time with friends. You're going to just be communicating on the phone. And I want to note that the 2019 data point is before COVID. And on all the older groups, you can see that COVID lockdown, this was May of 2020, you can see that for all the older groups, COVID caused them to accelerate the decline. But for the youngest group, there's no acceleration because they began social distancing as soon as they got smartphones in 2012. And by 2019, they were almost done. And so 2020, it was just continue the job. It wasn't even an acceleration. And even the time that they're together doesn't really fully count because they're not sharing face-to-face laughter. They're not putting their arms around each other or touching. They're not having like normal human mammal experiences. I'll skip this in the interest of time. Let's see. Okay, so that's my story about what's happening. And when I wrote the book and when it came out in 2024, I was focused on the mental health damage because that's where we had very good data. That's where the debate was between me and Jean Twenge on one side and some other researchers on the other. But since the book came out, what I've discovered, what I've come to believe, is that even larger than the mental health damage is the damage to the ability to pay attention, the damage to the ability to focus and execute a plan over the course of time. And so let's talk about that. A very good data journalist, Derek Thompson, wrote an article almost 3 years ago saying, the education stats are looking really, really bad, and it seems to correspond to the phones. We have a very good data set where we track student achievement. This is a test. How much do they know? How well did they do on the test? And what we see is that from 1971 through 2012, there was an increase, very slow, but we were actually making our students a little bit smarter or better educated over 50 years. And then when COVID happens, you see the 2023 data point, it goes down. And everybody freaked out and said, oh my God, COVID restrictions were terrible. It's almost as if we close down the schools and make kids look at a screen all day, they don't learn. But people thought it was COVID. But me and my team, we looked at this, we said, wait a second, the drop didn't start after COVID. The drop started after 2012. It might not have been visible until it keeps going, but clearly it started in 2012. And so some experts had predicted, well, it'll bounce back. It was COVID. But when we look at the 2024 data point, which is the last one, we see something very interesting, which is if you look at the smartest students, the students who score highest on the exam, over time, and every year you look at the highest performing students, what you see is that they went down during COVID, and then they come back up a little bit in 2020. So that's encouraging, right? But now look at the bottom half, the bottom 50%. They peaked around 2012, and by 2015, they had already begun to decline. And this is the peak, this is the main COVID point, and after COVID, they just keep going down. And this is half of the country. Half of our kids are going down, the reversal of 50 years of progress. This is incredibly serious. And it was this sort of finding, that's why I put the title on my talk, The Greatest Destruction of Human Flourishing. Sometimes I talk about human capital. This is an incredible destruction of human capital, human potential, the potential of young people to make a difference in the world, to hold a job, to be educated. And once again, you look around the world, it's not happening in every country, but when you look across about 35 countries take part in PISA, the Program of International Scholastic Assessment, no trend in PISA scores before 2010, and then it goes down. So this is a global diminishment of the human future. I had my team find data from Spain, and you'll be pleased to know that your decline is not as large as most others. So on the science scores, we see just a little bit of that trend. So your top performing quarter are down 8 points, your bottom quarter is down 18. So you have a little bit of that effect I just told you, but this is not large. However, and I had all these great newspaper headlines. However, this latest PISA, this is the worst Spain has ever done. It's just, and the headlines said that, but they also said, but at least we're not dropping as much as the rest of Europe. Okay. Now but even at the elite schools, I teach at New York University, our students are great. It's incredibly competitive to get in. These are the top students. And they find it very difficult to read a book because they've been raised with quick dopamine always available, always. And so if you're reading a book, sometimes a book can get boring and you have to read like page after page, and sometimes there's no photographs and nothing's moving, So but you're, on your phone, TikTok's always right there. And so we were talking about this in my class. I teach a class called Flourishing. We were talking about it, and one of the students said, yeah, it's true. She said, I open a book, I read a sentence, I get bored, I go to TikTok. This really powerful article came out a year and a half ago or so in the FT, and he goes through the stats for youth, which I knew, but then he shows this study, which I had not seen. This is a study of adults, mostly in Europe, and this is the share. So let's focus on the light blue line is illiteracy. The test is you read a paragraph, like one of them is about toast. You read a paragraph about toast, and then you're asked 2 questions about toast. Can you answer them? And if you can read, you can answer. The answer was right there in the paragraph. And up until 2010, it was only about 18% of people could not answer those questions about toast. And there's no trend before 2010. There's no trend. But when we get into this period, even adults are finding it more difficult to read. That's actually, okay, it's 2 paragraphs. 2 paragraphs about toast, and then answer 2 questions about toast. it's just hard to pay attention to things, right? Raise your hand if you're finding it harder to pay attention than you did, say, 10 years ago. I mean, there's just too much stuff coming in, too many things competing and fragmenting our attention. And as the author puts it, we appear to be looking less at the decline of reading per se. It's not just that people are reading less. He says we are seeing a broader erosion in the human capacity for mental focus and application. And again, we're in or will soon be in a battle with the machines, and if we can't really do anything, if we're just not very capable of doing anything, it's kind of game over. So this is a global emergency. Team humanity better get its act together and reverse this. Because, again, AI is going to make this much, much worse. Those education declines, that was just caused, we don't know if it was social media, if it was the computers on the desks, but AI, the term, for the first year or two, the term was cognitive offloading. You're thinking like, how do I get from point A to point B? I'll have the computer figure it out. Well, that's fine. We're happy to do that. But, what's the answer to this essay question the teacher assigned? I'll just have the computer do it. So cognitive offloading. But recently, the term that's become much more common is called cognitive surrender. You just stop even trying. Like, it's just so easy to just ask Chat or Claude. And so this is happening not just to young people. Many of us, I feel it in myself. We're just surrendering. So I think all these problems are going to get a lot worse very, very quickly. Very briefly on girls versus boys, the problem first became clear in adolescent girls. And so we all focused on social media, and that is probably the main reason for the sex difference. Whistleblower documents show that they knew what they were doing, they knew they were hurting girls especially, and they kept going. So I won't read all of this, but in chapter 6 of the book, there are so many different ways that social media hurts girls more than boys. I'll just show one of them here. So just feeding them constant eating disorder content. And another is, so I don't know, it was called Malas Chicas in Spanish, okay? So it's a really fun movie. In America, everybody's seen it. And so if you just, if you think about, there it is, okay, yeah. Oh, Chicas Malas. And so boys' aggression is ultimately physical. Like all the threats and the taunts, it's ultimately backed up by, I can beat you up if it comes to that. Girls' aggression is not that. Girls' aggression is, I can destroy your reputation and your relationships if it comes to that. And that's what, of course, this movie is about. And now imagine being a teenage girl and suddenly everyone is on Instagram and everybody can have fake accounts and everybody can put whatever rumor or gossip they want out there and it will spread and people will laugh at you and there's no way to respond. So social media has taken all the worst parts of adolescence, all the worst parts especially of female aggression, and made them much, much more powerful. That's what our girls are going through. The boys' story is different. It took me a while to figure it out because it's not focused on social media. It's focused on just the dopamine system, all the things that are going for boys' dopamine systems. Boys have been retreating from the real world since the 1970s. Video games have gotten better and better ever since. Porn is now so freely available, and the quality, the intensity of it keeps going up as data speeds and AI come in. Multiplayer video games are truly incredible compared to what us older folk, what we had in the 70s and 80s was so primitive. I mean, the games really are amazing. So the point is that boys are much more easily lured into just anything that gives you quick dopamine. And if you have lots of quick dopamine, then anything you do that isn't quick dopamine is really boring. It's like painfully boring. Like sitting in a class, reading a book, sitting at dinner talking to your parents. There's like no dopamine there. And it's really painful for a lot of kids, especially boys. And so the way that, an analogy that I find helpful is to think about all of these companies, all of these industries that have created all these incredibly alluring fish hooks. It starts with video games for sure. Video games are hooking boys very, very early. And so it starts with that, but then it moves on to porn when they get a little bit older. And nicotine, I can't believe nicotine is back so big in vaping and in all kinds of delivery systems. But our boys are getting especially addicted to nicotine. Sports betting, gambling, I'm sure it's a different company here, but are you able to bet on sporting events like yeah, okay. Well, I guess, but if you're betting on soccer like goals, at least there's not very many goals, so maybe you don't lose so much money. But it's insane that boys used to like sports, and now it's all about the betting and investing. So if you're a boy going through this, by the time you reach 21, your dopamine system is shot. You can't focus. You're not very useful as an employee, and you're broke because you lost all your money on gamified investment platforms. So, as my friend Richard Reeves puts it, a world of floundering men is unlikely to be a world of flourishing women. Everybody has a stake in this. And if you've seen the Netflix series Adolescence, there's a whole other set of issues that I could go into about the content of what boys are getting and the communities that they're getting pulled into. And I'll just make a final point about the damage, which I have to call spiritual degradation. And I'm not a believer, I'm not a religious person, but I wrote a book. My first book was called The Happiness Hypothesis, was about 10 ancient ideas, basically ancient wisdom about how to have a flourishing life. And the world's wisdom traditions pretty much agree that you have to have some sort of rituals in which you come together as a community and you make something sacred. I mean, this is what humans do to live together in groups. And that experience is not just cerebral. You bow, you march, you do things. And the body is so intimately connected with the brain. And you have tradition, you have times when you're silent and you let God or the universe flow into you. I mean, so I could go on, but you get the idea. There are ways of being that all of the world's wisdom traditions encourage us to do or to be. Every one of them is threatened when you give your kid a smartphone. Every one of them is harder when you have constant stuff coming in. When you take the body out of life, when you say communication is just as good on Zoom as in real life, it's not. So when you take all of this stuff out of life, what do you have left? You have a completely spiritually empty existence. It might be more efficient in some ways, but it's not a life fit for a human being. And so that brings us to the saddest graph in the book, which is we have this long-running survey in the United States called Monitoring the Future, and a question asked to 12th graders, so around age 17. Their statements. One is, life often feels meaningless. Do you agree or disagree? On a 5-point scale, agree or disagree? And so what we see, this is the percent who agree or strongly agree. So it was 1991, those kids were Gen X, and about 17, 18% of them said, yeah, life feels meaningless sometimes. And it goes down a bit for the millennials, so that for the millennials, it's down to like maybe 14% are saying, yes, life feels meaningless. And then when Gen Z enters the data set, this happens. And so our boys and our girls, they got there by different routes. The technology changed their lives in very different ways, but they all end up in the same place, which is my life is kind of meaningless because I'm really just consuming content, and that is meaningless. That is the incredibly depressing picture of where I think we are. But the thrilling part is that we are making so much progress getting out of it. This is what's happening now, I think, is probably the fastest global change movement that has ever happened. We've seen fast change in individual countries. You can have revolutions. But it's hard to think of a time, like turning on tobacco, getting tobacco out of childhood. That took 20 years in the United States, and it's spreading, it's spreading around the world, but it's taking decades. But this one is really, really different. And here's where the slides aren't as polished as I want, which I'll try to add on to them. In the book, I propose 4 norms that if we do them, we roll back the phone-based childhood and we give our kids back life in the real world. And so no smartphones before age 14, which I think corresponds to your ESO 3. No social media before 16. We just need a hard age limit, because otherwise we're all caught in a collective action trap. That's the point of this. Every parent hears, Mom, I need Instagram because everyone else has it. Okay, you're 10. You're telling me everyone else has it? Well, yeah, I mean, half of them do, whatever it is. But there's pressure. And the age just goes lower and lower and lower for smartphones and for social media. So we need clear markers that families can hold to. Phone-free schools, and then more independence-free play and responsibility in the real world. Let's see, is there anything else I was going to say about that? So in Spain, and actually that's the next one, we got that in the next part, okay. And I had some, ideas for parents, let's do that. Let's see, wait, so for Spain, it is really, really thrilling that Pedro Sanchez has been so outspoken against the social media companies for a variety of reasons, but he's really clued into what it's doing to kids. And so he was one of the first European leaders, along with Emmanuel Macron, to come out early this year and say, we're going to do it. You know, the Australians did it. We're going to do it too. We have to make this they both want to make it an EU-wide project, and it should be an EU-wide project. And the EU is working on it. There's a lot of interest in Brussels. But that could take a while. And so France and Spain and a few other countries have proposed doing it. I know it's being debated right now, but I'm really pleased by all that's happening in Spain. Also, what I've learned is that you guys were actually way ahead of the game. Hold on a second. Now what have I done? Let's see. Okay. You guys were way ahead of the game in Spain on getting phones out of school. Some of your provinces have been phone-free for like more than a decade. So Spain is actually doing, compared to the rest of Europe, Spain is doing very well on phone-free schools and is in the leadership position on raising the age to 16. Now, some advice for parents. How many of you in this room have a child under the age of 16? Raise your hand if you have a child under 16. Okay, so here's some, just a few tips. This is especially if you have children under 10, let's say, but I can sort of boil down a lot of advice in a simple formula. If you remember the book Animal House, there's a phrase, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. It's from George Orwell. So I think what we can use for our age is long stories good, quick dopamine bad. So humans are storytelling animals. We have always told stories. Wherever you go on this planet, if there are humans, the grandparents are telling stories to the grandchildren. That's a human thing. And telling a story on a screen is actually, they can tell really good stories. So a movie, a high-quality movie, people moving through a moral world and good things happen and bad things happen, that's great. If you want to watch movies with your kids, that's great. You know, 1 or 2 movies a week is a good thing to do. Even if you're, look, the main reason we give our kids screens is that we're really busy and the kid's bored. And here, screen, now I can do my thing. So if you want to sit down the kids to watch, that's fine with me. Some people say, oh, you should co-view, you should be there. Yeah, you should. But even if it's, this is good, that's okay. Here's what's really bad. The opposite of that is fragmenting time. The opposite of that is, I've got to cook dinner, I've got work to do, here, take my iPad, or here, take your iPad. And what you have is that one child using a touch screen alone, and a touch screen creates a stimulus-response feedback loop that involves dopamine. Watching TV doesn't. And so a touch screen, and it's going to end on short videos. That's where it mostly ends up, is short videos. So that's what teaches them, you know what? This video, I've been watching it for 8 seconds. It's okay. Swipe. Oh, this is really good. This is good. If you learn to optimize the dopamine flow, it's going to be very hard for you to read a book for the rest of your life. So this, I think, is the thing that's most harmful, just solo time with an iPad without a lot of screen controls. Lots of ideas for how to give your kids more independence. I think you were not as crazy as we were in America about locking our kids up and not letting them out. But I'm told here, actually all across Europe, that the trend is going this way. Bad ideas that we create in America tend to come your way. after a little while. And also, it's just, as we have fewer children and with modernity, we end up overprotecting. There's a lot of reasons why we do it, but we have to resist. So here are some ideas. If you go to letgrow.org, Lenore Skenazy and I have put up a whole bunch of ideas there for you. And finally, this whole thing is about collective action. And you have a great group here. Who's here? There's somebody's here from, okay, please stand up so people can see you. And what's your name? Stand up, please. Oh, you're not an administrator. Okay. All right. But this is an example. Are you from the group?
Yes, from Madrid, Alma.
Okay. Please stand up so people can see you. That way, if you want to get involved, talk to Alma at the end. Okay, Alma, just turn around and say your name. Well, okay. All right. Good enough. Good enough. Okay. Okay. And finally, my group, we've just formed a nonprofit organization. We have been working with governments around the world, with parents groups, with educators, with schools. So we have a lot of resources at anxiousgeneration.com. The movement is run by Alexa Arnold, and our goal is to reverse the changes to childhood, roll back the phone-based childhood, and restore the play-based childhood. So I hope you'll join us at anxiousgeneration.com. I hope you'll subscribe to, if you can read English, of course everything can translate, but afterbabel.com is my Substack or blog where we put out a lot of our research and a lot of ideas. And that's it. In Spain, you are really moving ahead. You're very active in confronting these issues, so I applaud you for that. And I look forward to my conversation with Anna and your questions afterwards.